1957. Cole & Sons, suppliers of wallpaper to the Queen.
Okay, well, this was my first real job. My mum knew two people, one in publishing and one outside of publishing, and she got them mixed up. Anyhow, I ended up, Cole & Son was a wallpaper printer or manufacturer,
Right.
and one of whose clients was the Queen. And it was all silk screen, hand printed wallpaper.
Wow.
So everything was done in, I don't know,
Panels? Sheets?
no, rolls.
Oh.
But you had a screen that was probably 3 foot, like the pattern got repeated.
Right.
Or you spaced it out and put another pattern. It was quite complicated. And we did, the most we did was 6 colour.
Wow.
Yeah, it was really cool.
Wow.
And it was at the top of Regent Street, near where the BBC is actually, a broadcasting house. And
So it was in London.
oh yeah,
And
right
this is
in
your
London.
first job.
It's my first job.
So full-time.
Full time, 8 till 5 or whatever the hell it was.
Right.
You got a small third of a pint of milk a day
What was
because of the smell,
the
because
smell?
of the inks.
Oh.
Yeah,
That was
it
to
was,
keep you healthy or something?
yeah,
Really?
yeah. It was mandatory. You had to have this bottle of milk a day.
Bizarre.
And the guy who
Were there any masks?
no, and no, nothing, no rubber gloves or any of that shit. Like, and it was literally screen printed.
Wow.
Yeah, and I mean, roll of wallpaper was
Long.
great big thing, and it would you'd have it. The roll would be there, it would go up, come down, you'd do it, and you pull it along, and then it would go up and up and up and up like this,
Wow.
where it dried.
Right.
But I guess it was probably an oil-based paint. And the guy who ran it, it was upstairs. We worked upstairs
Uh-huh.
and the guy who ran it, like the foreman or whatever he was a guy called Jack Sparrow.
Right.
Really nice bloke.
Right.
And then downstairs was really posh.
Hmm.
Was the showroom with all these poofters sort of, oh, hello, oh, yes, madam, we do this, that, and the other thing. And so they did, you could buy like printed wallpaper, like we printed some things. We had standard
Right.
screens, but if you came in and said, I want one with my coat of arms on or whatever it is, I want it in, pink or something, we did it.
Wow.
It was really
Huh.
a very fancy place, actually.
Huh. How long did you work there?
I was only there for about 3 months,
Yeah.
and I realised that, this ain't going anywhere, for one thing. And B, my mother, we then realised that sort of we should have gone to the other place.
Right.
And we got it sorted out. And then an opportunity came up at the other place to be an invoice clerk. And that was, in those days, you just joined a company and then you figured it out after that.
Oh, so it wasn't the job, it was more the company.
Well, it was very interesting, the whole process. So you roll up, first day, it had it was a publisher, Murray's, okay? So the sort of editorial offices
Right.
were on Albemarle Street, where it's an old house. It was, Sir John Murray bought it in 1768 or 9 or something.
Wow.
Yeah, second oldest publisher in London, in England,
Wow.
other than University Presses. Anyhow, so Albemarle Street was all the sort of editorial
Right.
and then Clerkenwell Road, which is what they call in the city, sort of, in the East End,
Right.
rather than the West
Right.
End,
The
was
working
the
class.
warehouse.
Ah, okay.
And what you did, so anyhow, you rolled up, and everybody, didn't matter who you were, in order to learn the list, to learn what books we published, you had to do this thing, being a looker-outer for 6 weeks. Didn't matter who you were,
Right.
okay? And what that was you basically filled orders.
Oh, okay.
So the order would come in, and would sort of, I guess it would get it went to invoicing, and they invoiced it,
Right.
and then it went to this sort of, it was like a library.
Right.
Fulfillment, and it was just bookshelves, and
Right.
you walked like 1 foot on one. You walked between the two. You climbed, okay.
Right.
And so I worked there. I had to do my 6 weeks there, and so you filled the order. You got a bit of paper. It said, Byron, Sherlock Holmes, blah blah blah. Da 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 da. You filled the order. And you know what a dumbwaiter is?
Yeah.
So you put it in that, and it went down to the warehouse,
Oh, okay.
and they packed it up, and it went out. It got delivered
Right.
to the bookstore.
Right.
And so I worked with a guy called Ernie Clapp,
Mm-hmm.
who had sailed on 3-masted schooners.
Wow.
I knew him. This was in like 57, I guess, or 58. And he was like he should have retired. He was like 60 something.
Right.
So, it was like the early part of the 20th century. He'd go to India on the things.
Wow.
Yeah, he was a really cool guy.
Wow.
Anyhow, he had this job. Ernie Clapp had the job, and I was his sort of. When I was there, I was him. I worked with him and a guy called Ginger and a guy called Frank. And our jobs was to fulfill the orders, basically.
Right.
And that taught you that they figured that was the most efficient way of teaching you the range of titles and the kind of titles that the company did.
Mm-hmm.
So you did that for 6 weeks. Then you became an invoice clerk,
Right.
and you had to hand write every invoice
Wow.
with carbons.
Right.
And like some places, like we used to supply, we had a good export sort of business as well. There's a place called Donald Moore that was in Singapore, and I mean, like it was a sort of, it was bigger than an 8.5, 11.
Legal size piece of
Legal size thing,
Yeah.
and sometimes in quintuplicate, so you have to really write
Right.
hard,
Oh, yeah.
and with all these bloody carbon things.
Wow.
So you had to be able to, like,
So that's where you got your neat handwriting
that's
from?
that's how I got my fancy handwriting. So anyhow, I did that, and I did that, I think, for about nearly 2 years, and it was kind of, it was okay, and like everybody was very pleasant, and they were all very eccentric people there. Like I worked with a guy called, I never knew his first name, Mr. Jameson, who wore tweed suits, and I don't know what he was, some sort of literary person of some sort, and this was his sort of day job kind of thing.
Right.
Anyhow, I worked with all these weird guys, and then an opportunity came up in the Foreign Rights Department,
Okay.
which was up in Albemarle Street.
Oh,
So you had to dress differently and go
Right.
up. That was the posh end of things.
Right.
And so, anyhow, I went up there, and I got this job in the Subsidiary Rights Department, for Foreign Rights. It was run by a woman called Hilda Radford, Miss. Always been a miss.
Okay.
And again, so anyhow, we were selling, if you wanted to excerpt a book,
Mm-hmm.
then you'd have to write and say, I want to quote 1,000 words of Jason Mayer's book, and we'd say, okay, it's 5 guineas or whatever the hell it is, and and you can only do it in France. You can't do it in Italy. That's another 5 guineas or whatever the hell it was, So anyhow, I did that, and the other side of the job was you had to do royalty statements for the authors. So every, at the end of the year, you'd have these bloody great ledgers, and so you'd fill all this shit in, and it said that Adrian Conan Doyle on all of his dad's books, God knows how much, I mean a lot of money.
Right.
And anyhow, and then you had to write the statements out by hand, but using ink.
Okay, not ink on triple.
No, and what they did is they had a thing called a Roneo machine, and basically it's rolls of wet tissue paper, and you put it through this machine, and it did a facsimile of the royalty statement, and then dried.
Oh, wow.
So it was a fact. It wasn't. It was a facsimile copy,
Huh.
and then we had to file and all this. These
Wow.
sort of hard bits of sort of trade, like they'd gone back to being.
Hard,
There's a
yeah.
roll that was sort of wet. I mean, it wasn't wet, but sort of damp, which you did on this thing, and then afterwards it dried out, and then you punched it and filed it, and it was like tracing paper basically.
And it had like a faint residue of.
No, it had an absolute copy in black and red of the royalty
Because
statement.
it just lifts a little bit of the ink out.
Yeah, it's an absolute copy. I mean, it's a
Wow.
facsimile. It's not like a copy. It is a copy, but
Yeah.
it's not like
Another
version that
Yeah.
sort of you press through on.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
is an absolute copy, and we had to
How-
file those bloody things. And when I was doing that, and I had obviously I had a sheet of blotting paper, like a big pad of blotting paper.
Right.
Well, because he's dipping.
Yeah.
I mean, not a fountain pen, it's dipping.
Wow.
Red and black.
Huh.
And I used to doodle on them.
Oh, okay.
And Sir John, we worked in an office which was like a long room, and we were at the end, and then along the sort of long bit they're like high benches that you sort of, like a desk that you stood up to, like
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
quite high.
Yeah.
And on all
Paste
the
up desk.
eh?
Like a paste up desk or something.
Well, or an old-fashioned teacher's, like
Oh, okay.
high, but long, really
Right.
long. And on there were these huge ledgers where this guy Harry Evans every day he would take the like as a looker outer as the stock depleted.
Right.
You said, okay, at the end of the day you'd have to do a thing that said, we haven't got any of these left, or we've
Sure.
only got 5 left, or so it's a stock control. And Harry Evans used to put these, made a daily entry of sales in all these ledgers, every title we had, by hand, in ink. Okay, so that was his job. So anyhow, Sir John used to come in every day around 10
Right.
to our office and look at the sales
Right.
every day.
Wow.
So he was like, he saw me doing this diddly
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah,
And,
yeah.
whoa, anyhow, eventually, I don't know how long I was doing the job, it must have been a year or so, I guess. A woman called Virginia Debenham, who effectively wasn't called the art director, but was the art director.
Right.
She was pregnant, announced her pregnancy, and was leaving.
Right.
And Sir John came down one morning and he said, asked me if I wanted the job because I drew.
Wow. So
He
you
said, I
went
noticed,
from
Mayor, I
clerk
noticed you.
to art director.
You're drawing. And no, and he said, what we'll do is, if you're interested, you can do it, and you'll have to learn as you go, sort of thing.
Right.
But he said, we'll send you to the London School of Printing on, I don't know, Thursday morning or something,
Right.
once a week.
Huh.
So I went to school
While you work.
once a week, paid for by them, and while I worked, and I was dealing with Christ, how old was I? I was like, at that point, maybe 19 or 20,
Wow.
and I'm dealing, you wouldn't know any of it, but like, there was one of the most famous of our authors was a guy called Osbert Lancaster. You can imagine Osbert Lancaster as a sort of posh bloke.
Yeah.
And he did a cartoon for the Daily Express every day.
Right.
And he did these sort of illustrated books on sort of various topics.
Right.
Well, like, I'm having to deal with him on printing his book and dealing with his book. And I'm like 20 and I ain't come from the right side of the tracks.
Yeah, yeah.
And he's some poncy, 50, 60-year-old guy.
Yeah.
So it was quite interesting.
Yeah.
And then there was
And you have like a knowledge because you've written their checks to these guys, right?
Oh
Like,
yeah,
you know
I knew how much they earned. Oh
Yeah,
yeah, I knew
so
exactly. I
it
could
wasn't
tell
a
you.
mystery. It wasn't
Oh
just
no, I knew who the best-selling authors were because I'd done all their bloody royalties.
Yeah, you had all this.
Oh
knowledge.
yeah, and I mean there was a poet who was the poet laureate in Britain, John Betjeman. Like he was like selling, seriously,
Yeah.
made a lot of money. Osbert made a lot of money. We did another guy called Parkinson's Law that was some sort of
Are you design like? Are you? Would you say you're an art
Yeah, I
director?
did the jackets.
Designing.
Yeah, I
You're
did the
designing the
jacket.
jacket.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I did Kenneth Clark's
Wow.
art book. Kenneth Clark was one of our, the
And this is like the first kind of couple of design gigs you've got.
Yeah.
Is you're doing covers of
yeah.
really well
Oh
known.
yeah, the first one I did was a book called The Romance of Words. And it was all about words. So
Right.
I did a collage of all these words. I cut them out of magazines and all this kind
Wow.
of shit. Did this stuff. Yeah. Straight in, deep end.
Deep end.
Yeah.
From
but, like,
invoicing.
when I did
design.
I know, but when I did a jacket, like Sir John had to see all the jackets.
Right.
So I did a mock-up, and I
Yeah.
had to go into his
And pitch it.
his room,
Right.
and he sat at a desk, and sort of I would stand next to him,
Yeah.
and he threw them at me. I mean,
Right.
he's, he was like
Involved.
very, and like
Knew what he liked.
not a kid glove kind of. I mean, he was a really nice. He was a real gentleman, actually, is what he was.
Yeah.
I mean, he was married to Lady Helen de Vere, and he had a butler and all this kind of shit.
Right.
At his place,
Right.
in Kensington or wherever I
Yeah, yeah.
never went to where he lived, But oh yeah, I mean, he was the real thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then there was Sir John, Mr. Murray, and a guy called Simon Young were the three sort of main kind of editorial dudes, And there was Sir John, they like all these things. They had their own books, their authors, their
Right.
books.
Right.
Mr. Murray and Simon Young. And Simon Young used to do a series. He was a bit of a weird chap, a sort of practically a mystic.
Uh-huh.
He did the Wisdom of the East series.
Oh, okay. Right.
All
Yeah,
this
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
Eastern philosophical
Yeah,
kind of crap,
yeah. Yeah.
And then we had an educational department as well that did like normal books on biology and
Right.
all this kind of stuff.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it was quite interesting. But yeah, you just did the job. I mean,
Yeah.
but it's old fashioned. Like Sir John was like, was a Sir John. He was a knight.
Yeah. Yeah.
And definitely up there, and like 6th generation or something or other.
Right.
Like
And his family had had the business.
since 1769. Yeah.
Yeah.
So like,
Yeah.
like
So he inherited it from his father.
yes,
And it was the family business.
yeah.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, it's weird also to have the class of like
but you see,
nobility being the people who you work for, and
Oh,
you're
yeah.
just like, as you say, like designing. Suddenly you feel
but,
yourself
but they gave
ship
it
out
like
of
he
water.
believed in giving kind of
hand
people
up.
opportunities. If you fucked up, I'm sure you'd be out of there in no
Yeah.
time. Like he didn't sort of.
Yeah.
But if you could manage to do it,
Yeah.
but what he did is he gave you the opportunity.
Well, also the whole idea of training through moving you through different positions.
Yeah, I
in
mean,
the
I knew what
organisation,
was going
That's
on.
like
Oh, yeah.
building an
Oh, yeah.
employee. That's
Oh.
not training a person.
Oh.
That's building an employee, and that's building loyalty for a lot longer than whatever your contract is.
Oh
right?
yeah.
So that's like a different way of looking.
Oh
at
no,
that
I mean I
type
was.
of. And
Yeah.
so going to school, saying,
Oh,
oh,
yeah.
you know what, we'll pay you and
Oh,
we'll
yeah.
give you the time. I mean, it's not just
Oh no, I
pay
mean
for
I had
you to go.
I had a morning off.
exactly.
Yeah, and the other story about Murray's was, it's a big house, okay,
Right.
5 stories,
Right.
no lift,
Right.
okay, so you walk up,
Right.
and there was a place, there was Sir John's room, and Mr. Murray's room, and then between them was what they called the middle drawing room. That was like a museum with glass cases with like Byron's dueling pistols there, and the,
Oh, wow.
all his mistress's hair all done in a thing, like
Weird.
really cool place actually.
Yeah.
It was really neat. Anyhow, there was, and we had a permanent like caretaker, janitor,
Right.
Stafford, who was Irish, and he lived in the basement.
This is sounding more like Faulty Towers.
Yeah, no.
Stafford, it's Basil in the basement.
Yeah, well, Stafford lived in the basement with his family. He was Irish.
His whole family?
Yeah. Oh, it's
It's a
a big.
big
It
place.
was a big house,
All right.
like a big
There's a
house,
number of
and
rooms.
he sort of did everything, like whatever needed doing that required muscle or whatever.
Yeah.
He did all that stuff.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, and anyhow, he would go to Ireland every summer for a holiday.
Oh, okay.
So it was offered to the younger members of the staff
Right.
to sleep over.
Okay.
Okay, like I don't know whether it's insurance or what, but like
Yeah.
someone had to be in the house
All
all
the time.
night.
Every night.
Yeah,
Okay.
so you got the gig.
Right.
So of course, and you got paid extra,
Sure.
but you're also living up in Mayfair.
Yeah. Brilliant.
That's pretty
Address.
cool.
Yeah, address,
Okay.
yeah.
So did, I did, in the summer I did my 2 weeks.
Right.
And I can't remember whether we went for a month or I must have gone for a month because it was, it's
But
hardly
during the
worth going.
days, it was still an office and all that.
Yeah,
sort
yeah,
of
yeah,
stuff,
yeah.
right?
And you had nothing to do with the day stuff. Like, he would like deliver the mail to everybody, for example. Well, I don't know who did it, but somebody else did it while he was away. But there was
all
this.
you did was sleep there.
Yeah, you just slept there.
And in this guy's apartment?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You slept in, I don't know, one of the bedrooms. I can't even remember. Anyhow, the other strange thing about it was there was a ghost. Byron's ghost. And I will swear to you, I saw him. He was standing at the foot of my bed one night.
Wow.
One morning. Well, one night in the middle of the night.
Yeah,
I mean, mind you, I knew what he looked like. I mean, I
yeah,
lived there, right? And
yeah.
Byron was their big thing. Like Murray, second or third, was Byron's publisher, and like that really put them on the map. Like this was it, and they did Byronia, as they called it,
Right.
like endlessly. They were always, some other twit would be writing a thesis on Byron. And as I said, we had these dueling pistols and all this other kind of crap lying around the place.
Yeah.
And there
You
was
were the experts.
the fireplace where he burnt one of his famous manuscripts,
Right.
and all this kind of crap.
Right.
Anyhow, I stayed there, and I would swear that he was standing at the foot of my bed.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Was that the last of the times of the sleepovers?
Huh?
Was that the last of your sleepovers?
No,
You continued
no,
going
no.
back.
And it was wonderful because I came, the next morning I told Sir John and Mr. Murray, and I thought it was brilliant.
Oh, write that down.
Really? Yeah. So anyhow, was my
Wow.
sort of first kind of job thing, So that's Murray's.
That's where you fell in love with publishing. It sounds like it was a great time.
It was real publishing.
Yeah.
Like really a very interesting business with lots of very eccentric and peculiar people, but
Yeah.
kind of neat,
Yeah,
It was
well,
very cool.
coming in through sort of like rights
And I did a
stuff
lot
like
of
that. That's really interesting.
you
Like,
did a lot of what?
You didn't come in through production. I always came in through the guy who paced up. And
Yeah,
then you do
yeah.
this,
Well,
and then you
there
do that,
wasn't.
and then
You
do the
see,
covers, you know?
when I was the art director, I can't remember. They didn't call me the art. I mean, nobody,
Right.
there weren't any art. You were just
Yeah.
the sort of art person, you know.
Right.
The art department, I think. Anyhow, I did the sort of creative, and then remember we're printing letterpress most of the time.
Yeah.
Okay, so there was a woman. We shared an office, and the woman, her name was Dorothy Liptrap. It's weirder and weirder. And she bought what they called all the blocks. Like she bought all the
Okay.
engravings.
Right. So
Because-
you'd have to spec it,
Oh yeah.
and then she'd buy it.
And I'd give it to her, and she
then-
would like deal with all that stuff.
Right.
Buy it, make sure they got delivered to the printer. I mean,
Right.
it
All that,
was a
yeah.
whole other different thing in those days. And of course, like, I'd see stuff on press. I mean, I would go down to Somerset
Yeah.
to Frome and like see
Yeah.
books on press and all this kind of crap. And I mean,
And
most
this
of
is
it was
just
letterpress.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, I know,
I
it's
hadn't
so-
respected that, but
it's really changed.
Wow.
Like it's
Yeah.
gone from that to like that.
yeah, done in 2 days. You know, when
Yeah,
you
yeah.
complain about it. You
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
And sent halfway around the world to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Anyhow, that was my Murray thing.
All right. Well, that is about half of what you've got down here. So, Eel Pie Island, Rose and the Fairy.
Okay, well, all right. So I had this job,
Right.
and then I also used to go to Eel Pie Island. Eel Pie Island is an island off Twickenham.
Okay.
All right. I lived in Whitton. Whitton is a sort of a suburb of Twickenham, not really a suburb, but a sort of part of, all right, it's like here,
A neighbourhood of.
Leslieville is part of Toronto.
Sure.
Okay, well, I mean, Whitton's nowhere near the size of Toronto, but, Twickenham's not the size. Anyhow, so on the weekends, I would go to so it's an island in the Thames, reached by a ferry on a chain.
Oh, okay.
Run by Rose, this lady called Rose, who had a sort of thing, a sort of wheel thing that kind of wound the chain, and it wound the boat back and forth.
One big arm.
She wasn't that big; she was a small woman. Anyhow, it was hilarious because, eventually they built a bridge over, but when I first went there, you had this ferry with this woman, and there was what they called a free house on the island, which is like not owned by one brewery.
Right.
They sold every known beer, and like it wasn't a Watley's House or a Courage or that kind of stuff. And there was a jazz club over there, a traditional jazz club, which I used to go to. And so you'd go over on the ferry, and everybody was sort of okay with it, and then come back. Everyone was absolutely plastered.
Right.
And this poor, quite small old lady would try and maintain order. I mean, I'm amazed it never sank. And there's the odd bloke that fell in. Did you have to pay? I think we might have had to pay something. Yeah, we must have had to pay something. Yeah. But because otherwise, we must have had to pay. I don't know, tuppence or sixpence or something. I don't know. We must have paid something. Yeah. And we must you'd pay
and it's
going.
the only way.
It's the only way. There was no other way to the island. Well, unless you had your own boat.
Yeah.
But there was no. And then eventually they built a bridge, and you went over on the bridge, and then you had to pay on the bridge as well. Huh. I remember that.
Huh. So you pay on the way over, and it's free on the way back.
Of course, and of course everybody was underage,
right,
and drinking fairly serious booze.
Yeah. And so this is your job on the publishing company.
And I did this on the weekend. And
on the weekend. Because you're in London.
Pardon?
No, you're back and forth.
Yeah, I commuted.
Okay.
I always lived at my parents' house.
Right.
So I commuted back and forth
to
London on the train. Mm-hmm. And then I would do, then on the weekends I'd go drinking with all these lads and stuff,
The 5 tiers. 5 extras or whatever.
No. These were not any Chiswick County boys.
So this is school's over. These friends are not school friends anymore.
No, they're drinking friends.
Right.
And we used to drink at the Rugby House, which is in Twickenham, near Twickenham Station. And then and they did scrumpy, like rough cider.
Yeah.
We'd drink there, and then we would walk down, go over to the island, dance and fart around in the island until God knows when, and then come back and then go home.
Right.
And then we did it Friday night, Saturday night, and that was it. And Saturday night we would often get the train up to London at 11 o'clock and go to the London jazz clubs.
Even after all this?
Oh, they opened at 11.
God. Yeah.
And they were open till... And on a real wild weekend, we'd do it and then get the milk train to Brighton at 3 or 4 in the Sunday morning. Drink in Brighton. There's a place called Applejohn's in Brighton. We'd drink there and fart around, and then come home and go to work on Monday morning.
Ugh.
Yeah, it was a fairly serious sort of
thick head
thing. Yeah, and that's where I ran into the cops.
What? Insulting behaviour.
Yes. I peed on somebody's garden.
Right.
And then at the time I did it. I got the boat back, or the bridge, or however I got back onto the mainland, and I was just sort of wandering around like an idiot somewhere, and the damn cop nabbed me. And
this is pre-CCTV.
Huh? Yeah.
This is pretty close.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know how they even identified me.
Yeah, exactly.
But they must have done. They lugged me up to the police station and charged me.
Right.
I mean, they didn't keep me in all night. They sent me home.
Gave you a bill, basically.
Pardon?
Gave you a bill. Charged you some money.
They charged me, and then I had to go to court.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And
it wasn't just pay a fine and walk away.
No, in fact, you were fined after the court appearance.
Oh, that's when they decided how much money they charged you.
£10. I was fined £10 and bound over to keep the peace for 2 years.
When?
If I had got caught doing anything else,
Right.
I would have gone to Borstal,
Right.
which is like
Juvenile detention.
juvenile prison kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I nearly got caught because I was over on the island during the day.
Ah, right.
Okay, so, on some weekend or other.
Right.
And a friend of mine, there's all these little cottages on the island. Okay.
Right.
And there's one that was empty, nobody there,
Right.
and we tried to break in, and we found all these stamps outside in a sort of a book or something that
Right.
you could actually were worth something.
Okay.
Anyhow, luckily, we decided not to take the stamps,
Right.
and we didn't actually. We tried to, but we didn't. We tried the door, but it was locked, and we
Right.
didn't bust the window and go in.
Yeah.
But if we,
Would
it
have
may
been a
have
different
changed
thing.
my life at
Yeah.
that point. Yeah. Anyhow, so yes,
Huh.
so that's the Eel Pie Islands. So.
Right. Right. And the Rugby House and the Mucky Duck.
Well, Mucky Duck is the White Swan in Richmond,
Right.
and the Rugby House were my two sort of pubs. After I had this court appearance, I thought I'd better clean up my act.
Right.
So I spoke to my granny Ballard. She lent me £100 and I bought a Vespa,
Huh.
which still meant I went to the island. But I then I was going out with a woman called Diane Chestnut and Anne Rogers, and I gave up the sort of drinking mob.
Yeah.
And partly having a
Can't drink and
scooter,
drive.
you can't drink.
You
When-
can, but
you,
it's
no, but and also you don't.
Yeah.
It's stupid to do
Yeah.
it,
Yeah, yeah.
So you don't do that. So Granny Ballard lent me £100, and I then had a scooter,
Right.
and which I used to drive to work then
Oh, okay. So
So-
you're now commuting from Twickenham.
to London,
London
and I'd
on
go
a
on a
scooter.
scooter. Yeah,
How long would that take?
oh,
It's hard
best
to
part of
remember.
an hour. Best part of an hour.
Okay, quite a
Yeah.
while.
Yeah, well, I'm in a scooter, right?
Yeah.
In England,
Yeah.
you don't hang around. You go on the outside, the inside, and
Yeah.
and,
Yeah, it's still an hour's back and
Oh
forth.
yeah. No,
It's
well, it
not
took.
like my commute of 15 minutes.
Oh no, but it took over an hour by train.
Right.
Yeah, you go up, you change, you do this,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so I've heard Anne Rogers and Diane Chestnut were both girlfriends in the Lisbon Times.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's Brian Isbell and Wurzel Gummidge.
That was me. I was Wurzel Gummidge.
What, is that your nickname?
Yeah. And I sort of gave up the boys' drinking club basically, and sort of Brian and I would. He was going out with Anne Rogers and I was going out with Diane Chestnut at the time.
Oh, okay.
And he had a scooter, I had a scooter, and
Right.
then we sort of joined the coffee culture. In Richmond there was a pub, a coffee bar called L'Auberge,
Mm-hmm.
and we'd go there, another one called Open City, and we'd go there, and so it was sort of smoking gouloirs, much more sophisticated
Right.
and more European.
Right. Still jazz?
No. We pretty well gave that up.
Oh, okay.
That
So
was
it's
sort
now
of
poetry and books. And
books and sort of
smoking
smoking
and
around,
coffee
looking
and
literary.
stuff.
Yeah, drinking coffee and
Tweed.
wine. No, it's sort of corduroys,
Ah, okay.
kind of,
Right.
sort of thing. Yeah.